I am delighted and honoured to speak with Richard Barnes today. For those of you who do not know Richard, he has over 40 years experience in the media business. He began his career as a radio presenter and journalist in Australia in 1979, and he then went on to move to Europe in the mid-80s after winning awards in Australia for the best non-metropolitan and metropolitan news in Australia. In Europe, he has worked in radio in London and Monaco and has lectured in journalism and acted as editor-in-chief for major trade show dailies such as IFA International. Today, Richard works in consulting and editing roles for a number of organizations throughout Europe and North America, and he continues to work in motorsports at events such as the Monaco E-Prix. He just published his first book, What's News, which, as it says on the cover, is a down-to-earth guide to applied journalism. I am delighted to welcome Richard today. Hello, Richard.
Hi, Alicia. It's great to be with you as well. I'm delighted to be with you too. So it's the feeling is mutual.
Thank you so much. Now, I think that I first met you many years ago at the World Music Awards in Monaco, where you were in charge of media for that event since its inception. And I was so impressed at how you kept cool and calm during that event when you were dealing with the world's media, and you had to control them and the talent too. So that was my impression. Was that the case?
Actually, yes. I learned over the years not to get flustered by things, and that's very important. It's one of the things that I mention in the book as well. When I was 20 or 21, I had a kind of a nervous collapse when I was on air because you get so flustered sometimes by things. And I'm one of the top news readers in Sydney also actually passed out on air when I was there and I had to take over from him. So these are little things in the background that you don't know that happen. So after that, I kind of learned how to be very zen about everything. So the World Music Awards, yes, are extremely stressful because you're dealing with the world's biggest egos, both in the field of the artists themselves, but also with the journalists, many of whom, of course, we had the top people from the top networks around the world. They all think they're the best and they all want the best coverage. They all want to get in the back door. So it is very stressful, but you have to stay calm. You have to take things as they come. And I think that's one of the lessons actually in the book that I talk about.
Yes. I saw that. And I really am so admiring because I mentioned that event because in the book, you do tell a couple of interesting stories about media behavior. And, you just touched on how they all think that they should have the best interviews and they are the best. So how are those stories important for your reader, as well as for us all to learn from about media behavior?
Okay, so there are probably two key stories in that I pulled out that sort of stood out from the others. One was about a woman that we came to the show in Vegas and in Los Angeles. Her name was Koala. She was working for People magazine, and we ended up giving her a backstage, the only backstage pass for a journalist, because normally no journalists go backstage, because she was such a nice, calm, approachable person, and we sort of got the feeling that she wasn't going to disturb the artists backstage, but that she could approach them in a very nice way, which she did. And she was so charming backstage, and all the artists were very happy to talk to her, and she got some of the best stories for People magazine, which of course, as you know, has a massive circulation. And so that happened the first time in Vegas, and then of course we welcomed her back the second time in Los Angeles. And just by being a nice person, that was what made the difference, because she didn't go and aggress or hassle the artists that were backstage. She was very polite. She would first talk to their management and so on, and work it out the right way. And she got some fantastic interviews that way. On the other hand, I had one story in Monaco, and these are anecdotes, so we had Laetitia Castor, who came to the show because I'd met her before, and I convinced her to come with her agent to the show, and she as a presenter, which she did, and she was very, very charming, and very she was very open to interviews with any of the media that were coming there. We organized interviews on a Riva boat, so that it was a very nice setting for anybody that wanted to interview her. Then on the actual night of the event, there was an Italian TV crew that was there, that happened to be the partner TV station. And they leapt out in front of her on the red carpet, which you don't do. This is a no-no at any show like that. You let the artists walk along the red carpet, and you don't jump in front of them, and you don't go on the red carpet. And I said to them, "Excuse me, you can't do that. You've got to, can't do it." No, we just want just one word, just a quick interview. I said, "No, you can't do it. It's the interviews were before, and no." And they kept trying. So I actually had them kicked out by the security, and they complained bitterly about being kicked out. But I said, no, I mean, the rules are the rules. You play by the rules. You play nicely with the people who want to be talked to. Yes, you can be a bit assertive sometimes to talk to people, but you have to play by the rules, and you have to do it the right way. So thankfully John and Melissa, who run the World Music Awards, were very supportive of me kicking these guys off the red carpet, and it was true. I mean, you don't do that. So but this gives people, why that's important is because I've seen a lot of journalists, and particularly, for example, in the UK, who are just rude, pushy, want to get the story any way they can, doesn't matter. My theory is totally the opposite. You don't do that. You go about things the right way. You make the good contacts. You're polite with people. You're nice with people, and you get the good stuff. I mean, that's how it works. So again, that's anybody getting into journalism has to realize that no, you don't have to be pushy to get a good story. You don't, and in fact, it might work the other way around. If you're too pushy, it's going to work very badly. So another lesson.
Yeah, very, very good lesson. And that really brings me to, why did you decide to write the book now? And how would you describe it? Clearly you want to be able to inspire our younger generation who are thinking of going into journalism. But was that the only reason? Why now?
There were a couple of reasons. One is that I've noticed that the levels of journalism are slipping in many ways, and communication as well. Press releases are very badly written. Journalists are not doing a very good job a lot of times. Some are. I mean, you get great journalists still. But and then I had a stagiaire, an intern working with me when I was in Marseille, and she was about 21 years old, a German girl working in doing a communication course. And she said to me one day, "Richard, the things you're telling me about this job, it's really useful, but it doesn't exist in a book, what you're telling me. This is all practical stuff." She said, "You need to write a book about this." And I said, "Well, I've been thinking about it for a while." So it sort of prompted me. And I said, "Yeah, I mean, a lot of the things that people need to know are not academic things. They're practical things." Yeah. And so I thought, well, why not write a book that talks about the academic things? So I still teach talk about what you have to do to write a good story, but with the added a lot of added anecdotes all the way through the book. So that sort of helps explain how you apply what you're learning to the real world, and how it fits into the real world. So yeah, I mean, that's why I finally decided to do it at that point. And it took me a couple of years to finally, give birth to it, but it worked okay.
Well, what I really love about it actually is that you do talk about your personal experiences, because it helped me to understand what you're teaching in the book and also to get to know you more. And one experience is about you getting screwed. So what happened there?
Well, getting screwed in when it's in the type of getting screwed that I'm talking about is not a very pleasant way of getting screwed. It was important to talk about getting screwed because it can happen if you're working as a journalist, even for big agencies or whatever. So it turned out I had actually a couple of stories about that, but probably the main one was when I was doing a series of stories about wives and friends of Formula One drivers. And with that, I was working with a very well-known German photographer who's based in Monaco, and she was doing these beautiful black and white photos, and the idea was to sell these, but we were also giving a lot of money, by the way, to charity, which was why the girls wanted to take part, Monaco Red Cross. And a German journalist said to me, he was a TV journalist, he said, "Do you mind if I come along and film some of these photo sessions?" And I asked the photographer who I was working with, and she said, "Yeah, that sounds okay. I mean, it's good promotion. I mean." And so he came along to one of the photo sessions, and I said, "Well, the only thing is you can't run this on TV before we've run the article in the magazine." So he said, "Yeah, no problem." And then I found out a few days later, German TV was already running this story with some very unflattering images of the woman in question, because of the way they'd filmed it. It was very unflattering and really embarrassing. So the agency, of course, got very angry at me, as did the German magazine that was going to run the story, as if it was my fault. And I said, "Well, sorry." And then the next week, a very famous French magazine bought the story. And I was very happy because I thought, well, this is great. But the way I structured the interview it wasn't an interview. It was actually 5 words: power, passion, love, speed, and fear. And I got each of the 4 women talking about that because their husbands were, in the Formula One thing. And so I wanted those to be the themes. And when it came out in the French press, it was just after a big accident in Spa with Coulthard and another driver up the top of the hill. And the article was entitled "Celles qui ont épousé la peur," those who married fear. And they just took the answers about fear and nothing else.
Wow. And
so the agents, the driver's agents who'd organized the interviews for me, were extremely angry at me because they said, "This is not what we agreed to, And I said, "Well, it's not what I thought was going to be printed either." The unfortunate thing is as a journalist, you can't really attack the magazine that's just run your story, particularly when they're very big and you're just, a humble journalist. So it's lessons about how to handle your work. So ideally, I should have asked for some sort of a guarantee that the story would have been run in its integrity, and so on. So yeah, I mean, it's also about trusting people that you shouldn't trust, and all that kind of stuff. So it's lessons, but it's life lessons, And I thought, well, I've learned these lessons, and I the bitter hard way. Maybe it's a good idea if I put this in a book and let people, see it, read about it, and think, well, maybe we should be careful about that sort of stuff if we're journalists.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because I suppose in our naivety, when we're coming into the world of journalism, I mean, who do you trust? So, but also to know that you can put those clauses in to say, no, this has got to be as it's written, and that you get that guarantee too. So,
or that if they want to change something, that you do it together, so you just don't get free slather to change my story any way you want. So I think it's important.
Yes, very, very important. Wonderful. So you also talk about an event many years ago, which was I think it was a charity baseball match.
Yeah.
Celebrity baseball match.
Up on the hill above Monaco. Yes.
Yes, that's right. Organised by our lovely Kate Powers. And one of the celebrities taking part was Sharon Stone, who I'd love to meet. Now, you managed to get an exclusive interview with her then. And what was the lesson you learnt from that episode?
Actually, two lessons. One, well, it's going back to asking the right way, doing it the right way. I mean, I asked Kate to introduce me to Sharon's manager, which she did. And I explained to her manager, and also Kate explained that I had a local TV show. I was quite humble about it. It's Tele Monte Carlo for someone like Sharon Stone is very, very small. And but I said, I'd love it if Sharon could have a few words with me for my program. And he went and spoke to Sharon, and she agreed to do the interview, and we did the interview, and it went very well. At the end of the interview, a journalist working with People magazine came up to Sharon, a guy that I actually know very well, and he's a good friend, but he said, Sharon, People magazine, I just want a couple of words. And she said, no, sorry, I've done my interview for the day. I don't want to do any more. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. I got the interview for Tele Monte Carlo, and he couldn't get it for People magazine. So it was like one for me. But the other interesting thing about that particular match where Sharon Stone was of course she was there when Prince Albert was playing, and they did a group photo, and I think Sharon was next to him in the group photo, and his arm was around her like this. One of the French gutter press actually cut out that picture of just him and her, and made up a story about their relationship, which of course didn't exist, because she was there with her boyfriend. So of course this was all just totally invented by these, I can't call them journalists. So again, that was sort of showing how the gutter press work, and it can be quite shocking. But so if you want to be a journalist, don't work for people like that, please.
Not a choice. You mentioned about Tele Monte Carlo, and in Monaco, people will remember you for your days there, and also for Riviera Radio.
Riviera, yep.
Can you tell us a bit about your time with each of those?
Yeah, it was a long time ago. I mean, I know Lucien Joy actually wrote a book about that time, which and I think you could probably write a few, because there were so many funny things that happened. I started working with Riviera Radio when they were across the border, still in Campo Rosso Mare. Oh. And if you put on the kettle and the back production office at the same time, all the power would go off. It was quite a funny place. And then we moved to Monaco in 1987, and we took offices in the RMC building, which was at Boulevard Princess Charlotte, in the big RMC building, which I'm very sad that building was taken down, actually, because it was a beautiful historic place. And it was, to me, it was a shame that went. But I have amazing memories of that building, and Tele Monte Carlo was on the upper few floors. One day, Carol Chevrier, who used to come past our offices downstairs, came and said, Richard, why don't you do you're doing stuff on Riviera Radio, why don't you do something for Tele Monte Carlo? And I said, well, I'd love to. I mean, if you can introduce me to the right people. And so she introduced me to Raymond Bella and Georges Geoffrey, who's sadly no longer with us. And we started an English language TV show on Sunday night called Sunday. And that went really well. And then Tele Monte Carlo got taken over by different groups, and they didn't do the magazine shows anymore. So that sadly finished. But those memories are amazing, because I did get to meet a lot of really interesting people doing that show on Tele Monte Carlo. And that also introduced me to the World Music Awards, because I presented the World Music Awards for Tele Monte Carlo as well. And then they were bought by TF1. So yeah, I mean, but it was in the late 80s, early 90s. So a lot of things have changed since then. But I'm happy that Riviera Radio is still running, and that there's some great memories from the station.
Yeah, fantastic. So, other than writing this book, since those days, can you name a couple of major highlights for you?
Highlights, yeah, I mean, probably one of the top ones is being, so over the last 20 years, I've been working in B2B publications. So nothing at all to do with radio or TV. It's all print and it's all basically B2B. And for a company near Marseille called Clever 10, and we were specializing in B2B publications. We created in about, well, a bit more than 10 years ago, so the daily magazine for the IFA show in Berlin, which is the world's biggest home electronics show. So that to me was a very big highlight. Mm. After that, we also created the show daily for the ITB show, which is the world's biggest travel and tourism trade show.
Wow.
And we also did ITB China in Shanghai, ITB Asia in Singapore. And then from that, I was doing some really interesting consulting missions. I consulted with the Tourism Ministry of Malaysia. I did about 100 stories for them in 2017, 2018. So I spent a lot of time in Malaysia working with the ministry, with the minister, who's still a good friend, by the way, the ex-minister now. He's now ambassador to Washington. So I think, yeah, I mean, the three highlights would be the two big dailies and the consulting mission for Malaysia. Malaysia, to me, was a great, it was really, really exciting and interesting working with them and creating media assets. We actually created like assets that media could use freely. So I said to them, you know, we need to give out free stuff to the media because they were partnering with the ITB show. And so we just created story ideas, we created photo ops, we created all sorts of stuff. But I also got to see all of Malaysia, which was also pretty nice. So
wonderful, wonderful. So during COVID, how was your work affected? And yeah,
it was very, very badly affected. I think, like most journalists. And so I mean, it went down to almost nothing. There was still some bits and pieces. Given that we had extra time, I created a company with a couple of other people in the UK called Allmont Global, with Yuri Horovy, who's a virtuoso travel advisor, and with Mary Gostelow, who is kind of the world's guru of luxury travel. So we created this company to advise tourism ministries and destinations about how to get more luxury travelers or high-end travelers to go there. So I kept myself busy doing that, and of course finishing writing my book as well. So it gave me a bit of time.
Gave you the time to do that. Yes, yes. Well, at least you made the most of the time too, which is very good on your part. So if you had some key messages to give to an aspiring journalist, what would they be?
I think probably the most important thing for a journalist is to have real, genuine interest in people and things. I often see young people who are just not really interested in things, or you'll give them a story idea if they're doing a story, and it's like, oh, I don't know. Actually, anything you do can be interesting. Anything. If you look into it hard enough and you think about it hard enough, anything is interesting. So have a genuine interest in people and things, and I think, of course, I talk quite a lot about that in the book as well. Of course, we were talking about that before. Don't let the stress get to you, because the stress can really mess people around. That's why a lot of journalists become alcoholics, by the way. I would say follow your instinct, and if you think something's worth it, you can take a leap of faith. So if you want to get into something new, do something in a story idea or anything, take a leap of faith, and be willing to do stuff for free if you like it and if you can learn from it. I would say another thing: be highly creative and different in your work, because it's perhaps simple to write a story if you think about it, but it's not simple to make it creative and interesting. And what else? I would say don't take things personally. When I was in Sydney, I was retrenched in a couple of companies that I was working at. They had to lay me off, but I didn't take it personally, because it was not because I'd done a bad job. It was just because that was how they had money problems and so on. Still, there's some of them are still good friends. I also, by the way, when I was at Riviera, had to let go some people who were good friends, and I'm still good friends with them too. I would say work hard when you have to, work very, very hard if you have to, and always do more than you paid for. So in other words, go the extra mile. Those would be my key messages.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much for sharing those. And I have to say that I love the book. There is such a wealth of experience and knowledge there, and sharing that with us is terrific. I loved getting to know you more, and I loved as well everything that, applying your experience and the practical nature of that, so that I could really learn about the business and how to apply exactly the skills, the techniques, and the academic way of learning. So thank you so much for that. How can our viewers and listeners get hold of a copy, and where can you be contacted?
Well, the easiest way to get a copy is go to amazon.co.uk or amazon.com or amazon.fr or whichever Amazon is in your country. Type in "What's News" by Richard Barnes, and you'll find it there. So that's probably the easiest way. And people can get it either in Kindle version or in paperback version. So yeah, people, yes, can contact me. My email is rbarnes@monaco.mc.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Richard, it's such an honor for me to be able to speak to you today. Thank you so much for your time. I wish you all the best with the sale of your book and your continuing career. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alicia.